Hello, I'm John. Welcome to the Red Dice Diaries and a
RPG Bugbears
episode. Before we go any further, first of all,
the disclaimer.
now, when I'm doing this RPG Bugbears, this is just me having a bit of a cathartic moan in general. I am most definitely not targeting any specific individuals or particular games. So, if you're fine with that, proceed on with the episode, and I hope you get a little chuckle out of it, and maybe it raises some points of interest. If you think it's going to be difficult for you to distinguish between that, I would advise just moving on to a more regular episode. Everyone good? Okay, let's get on with this RPG Bugbears episode then. And this episode, I want to talk about something which I've noticed previously in games, and it's always sort of niggled at me, and that is the idea of the thief, typically in a D&D style game, who steals from the rest of the player party. Now, let me just say a small caveat here. I am not talking about roleplay games where the whole point of the game is having an antagonistic group of people who are butting heads with each other. I am absolutely fine with that. I used to play Vampire the Masquerade Mind's Eye Theatre back in the day, where the whole aim of the game is to crawl to the top of the power structure over the broken bodies of your enemies. Now, as long as I go into a game knowing that, I am fine with that, and to be honest, I'm fairly good at it. However, if I rock up to a game which is normally fairly sort of group-centric, like D&D is the obvious version, you know, adventuring parties, etc., I generally try and sort of come up with a character and portray them as a team player, because at the end of the day, I'm doing this hobby to relax, to unwind, and I want everyone else around the table to be having fun as well as me. And I think personally you get a lot more done if you're all sort of pulling in the same direction, plus you avoid any ill feelings or anything like that. Now, I can already hear some people in the background saying,
"Oh yeah, but that's what my player character would do. I'm just doing what my player character would do."
Now, as far as I'm concerned, that is one of the most tired, overused BS excuses that I have ever heard. In general, I'm a massive fan of doing what your player character would do, and in some cases that isn't an excuse, it's an entirely legitimate rationale. However, far more I've often seen it used as an excuse, because when someone says I'm doing what my player character would do, what they actually mean is I'm doing what I really want to do, and everyone else who's in the group. I'm not saying everyone does this, obviously I'm generalizing, but that has been my experience. But as I was sort of thinking about this, I started off thinking, well, is it the sort of like the fault of the character class in particular? Because the character class is called a thief, and again I'm generalizing, but it's mainly thieves that I sort of tend to come across this with. So I've been delving back into my role-playing archives, and I've got a few books here. So first of all, I have my print-on-demand copy of the Dungeons and Dragons Rules Cyclopedia, and if I flip to the page where it describes thieves, it says, "A thief is a human who specialises in stealth, lockpicking, trap removing, and other such activities. As the name indicates, however, most characters belonging to the thief class, do steal." Then in brackets underneath it says, "They rarely steal from their friends or members of their own groups, however. A thief who steals from friends is usually not permitted to adventure with them ever again." Now, it's interesting that they've sort of tried to head that off there and prevent that sort of inter-party conflict. And I think they make a very good point. And to be perfectly honest, if you're a thief who's knocking around with like a group of burly, fightery and arcane-wielding adventurers who, let's face it, in a lot of OSR games aren't always the most pleasant of people, I think if you get off with them just like kicking you out of the group when they find you dibbing your hand in the pocket, then you are doing extremely well. The party is a paragon of saints, or more likely, they've just not killed your character because they don't want to upset another player, which, yeah, I can sort of see the point with it. I suppose I am arguing for, sort of keeping a little bit of an eye on the group dynamic in order to prevent things from escalating and causing problems. However, far simpler in my opinion, just not to steal from the party in the first place. After all, it's not as though there isn't plenty of loot out there. It's not as though the XP doesn't get divided evenly. Happy days. So let's move on with my rambling tour through some of my D&D books. If I open up my AD&D 2nd edition Player's Handbook here, first time I've cracked that bad boy open for a bit, let's have a look at the thief description. It says, thieves come in all shapes and sizes, ready to live off the fat of the land by the easiest means possible. In some ways, they are the epitome of roguishness. But then there's a little sort of shaded box underneath, which draws your eye to it since it's the only non-black and white thing on this particular page, and it reads, the profession of thief is not honourable, yet it is not entirely dishonourable either. Many famous folk heroes have been more than a little larcenous. Reynard the Fox, Robin Goodfellow, and Ali Baba are but a few. At his best, the thief is a romantic hero, fired by noble purpose, but a little wanting in strength of character. Such a person may truly strive for good, but continually run afoul of temptation. So they don't specifically say, look, don't steal from the party, it's a dick move, in the D&D, so the AD&D 2nd edition Player's Handbook. However, they do try and push the angle that just because the class is called Thief doesn't mean you're like a commonplace footpad or pickpocket. You can stretch the boundaries of that. So I think they're trying to more sort of subtly edge you towards that whole don't steal from the party vibe. So I'm going to go a bit more up to date now, and I've cracked open my old school essentials classic fantasy genre rules that I got very recently. Did an unboxing on my YouTube channel, and the way it describes thieves in that is, thieves are adventurers who live by their skills of deception and stealth. Their range of unique skills makes them very handy companions in adventures. However, thieves are not always to be trusted. So a bit of a sort of slide back, in my opinion, from the sort of rule cyclopedia where it's specifically saying, oh, don't steal from the rest of the party, and the AD&D 2nd edition Player's Handbook where it sort of tries to broaden your horizons and sort of subtly suggests you shouldn't steal from the party. The old school essentials genre rules seems to be suggesting that actually the rest of the party are probably right not to trust you. Now, I do have to wonder, is this because of maybe AD&D 2nd edition was originally designed for tournament play, so we're trying to make sure everyone got on? Or is it just a case that as D&D's been played more and more, perhaps this sort of dishonest thief who steals from the rest of the party trope has become more accepted to the point where it's just a part of the D&D experience? Now, I've just finished recording an episode where I was talking a little bit about Lamentations of the Flame Princess, and one of the things I particularly like about Lamentations of the Flame Princess is that it does not have a thief class as such. What it has is the specialist class, and that occupies a similar niche to the thief or rogue classes in most D&D spin-offs. It's someone with a lot of useful skills rather than just being a fighter, a healer, or someone who uses arcane magic. Now, the description of the specialist in Lamentations says, fighters are adventurers because they are so inured to death that they cannot settle down to a normal life. Gritty. Magic users are those that have pursued the dark arts and are no longer welcome in society. Clerics are charged by their gods to go forth and perform their special duties. Specialists They do it because they want to, whether inspired by greed, boredom, or idle curiosity. Specialists or professional explorers risking life and limb simply because a less active life is distasteful to them. In some ways, this makes them the only sane and normal adventuring characters, but in other ways, it makes them the most unusual. So I really like this description because it's getting across that whole sort of roguish idea without any of the baggage that sort of calling the class a thief brings along with it. And I suppose, as I've sort of talked myself around during this episode, you can't really blame people when they look at their class and it says thief and all their skills are like steal stuff, move silently, stuff like that. You can't blame them for thinking, oh, well, I'm a thief, I best get robbing. So is it something that's been sort of reinforced by the game, despite obvious early efforts to hint that maybe stealing from the rest of the party isn't a good idea? What do you guys out there think? I think it's an interesting point for discussion. And like I say, the whole sort of working against the party, it really is something that doesn't really do it for me. And when I sort of see it happening in games, which luckily doesn't seem to happen very often in the games I play, whenever I sort of see it, I'm just like, really? But and I tend to respond, so I suppose, fairly harshly in character, which I'm sure no one will find surprising. I can't think of anyone who's found someone dipping a hand in their pocket or stealing change from them and just gone, oh, that's fine, don't worry about it. So what do you guys out there think? Do you think that thieves should steal from the party? Are they just following what their characters would do? Do you think maybe the class needs to be reclassified, renamed, or otherwise rejiggered? I'd love to hear what you guys out there think about it. So please either drop me a voicemail on the Anchor app, and I'll put a link to where you can drop me a voicemail in the description of this episode, or you can reach me via email at reddicediaries@gmail.com. I really do enjoy receiving voicemails and emails from you, and hopefully we can get a little bit of a discussion going. So until I see you next time, I'm going to put the RPG Bugbear back in his cage. I hope you all enjoy yourselves, whatever games you're playing, and make sure you keep an eye on where your rogue's hands are and that he's not dipping into the party funds. Take care, and I will see you soon.